Hello, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new. My name's Melina and today is a very exciting video. So I have been hinting at a end of year summer wrap up for quite a while now. August is almost done. Oh, summer is over. I think by the time you watch this, we will be officially in September. And so I'm going to be doing my summer reading wrap up. I read quite a few books and I'm going to break it down by month so it doesn't get too confusing. So let's just jump into it because I think this is going to be a long one. So I have my trusty, just regular bullet journal out. And here are my June stats to start off. I read 13 books in June, 1 literary fiction, 3 fantasy, 1 thriller, and a romance, and 8 romances. Starting off the top, I read The Tenant by Freida McFadden. Now, I read, I think it was called, what was the other one? She had one that came out, The Crash. She released The Crash earlier this year and I did not really like it, but my book club loves to read her books. And so we decided to put The Tenant as the next book for our book club and I did not like it at all. There were so many things wrong with it. It was a little ridiculous. I feel like her characters are all the exact same person with a different name and a different voice if you're listening to audio. The best thing about her books is the fact that the chapters are really short and you can get to the whole book in a day. You could easily read it in a sitting or listen to it in a sitting. Besides that, I'm not a big fan of hers. Her writing is not very strong, and with the exception of The Housemaid, the original, and The Boyfriend, I have not really enjoyed any of her books. And even those, while they're not written in the best way possible, I enjoy them because again, they're fast-paced and addicting and the plots were actually really fun to read through. So I did read The Tenant and I personally rated it at 2.5 stars. Not her strongest book. Then I read, I do have the books all right here, so we're gonna pull these out. I read Slapshot by Kelsey Curto. Now, I am a huge fan of Kelsey Curto books. She writes these really fun, I talk about her a lot, but she writes these really fun sports romances. She hasn't only written that, but she has stuck to that for a while now. She had her Love Through a Lens series and she wrote 3 or 4 of them, and then she moved on and she left that series and started the DC Star series. This is actually the 3rd book in the series. So this story follows Hudson and Madeline, and Madeline is a single mom who is who is a chef looking for a job, and Hudson is part of the DC Stars hockey team. Their relationship is really cute. It is a super slow burn, so if you are not into a slow burn where there is no spice for the majority of this book, then maybe you won't like this, but I personally really have enjoyed reading Hudson's perspective, or not Hudson's perspective, but getting to know Hudson through Maverick's book, his first book. And so getting to read about him in the 3rd book, because we also get that in Liam's book and now it's his, he is one of the main side characters. He gets a lot of screen time. He gets a lot of lines. He is the nurturing, loving, golden boy. He is as good as he gets, and if you like a good boy, and Madeline, who is obviously very protective because she has a daughter who had a miserable first marriage, she's very guarded. It's really fun to read. I would say that this technically wasn't my favorite book by Kelsey Curto. I think right now if I were to rate the 3, it would be Maverick's story, Liam's story, or Maverick and Liam for tied, and then it would be Hudson's story, but it's just personal preference in terms of the personalities of the characters and the plot and everything that they go through. But I really enjoyed this, just like I enjoyed all of her books, and I ended up rating this one a 3.75 stars. Then I read With a Cherry on Top by Letizia Lorini. She writes these really fun rom-coms. Her characters are super funny and a little bit ridiculous at times. This is her Love and Other Recipes series. So far, she had written 3 others, and I think this one, I didn't expect it to be as good as it was going to be because I'm not always a big fan of age gap romances, and she knocked it out of the park. It was so good. I think that it had everything I wanted and more. The book was funny. It had a lot of depth to it. Each of the characters had a lot to overcome and go through personally before their relationship could even work out. It's still not my favorite one in the series. I still think The Wedding Menu is top tier, but this one was really phenomenal. And if you haven't read any of her books, I really suggest you check her out. I enjoyed so far all 3 of the books. I read all 4. I liked all of them except for Riding the Sugar High, and that's only because Riding the Sugar High is a lot more of a fast burn, and as a slow burn girl, I just didn't appreciate it as much as the other ones, but it's still not bad. Her writing is still really good. I ended up rating With a Cherry on Top 4 stars. Moving on, I read The Roommate Experiment by Camilla Isley. I go over this all the time, but I received an art for her, and I always enjoy to read her books She writes these really short, snappy rom-coms. They're actually funny. The plots are super fun to get through. They're just really enjoyable overall. This one I still really enjoyed. This one had to do with the best friend's brother and one of the main characters from the original series, her best friend. And so it's kind of interesting because as you're reading this series, you already know what's going to happen, because in the first book you get some of the story that comes into their story. The second book also, they all kind of take place not at the same time but at a very similar time period. So this was really interesting to read this one already knowing what's going on with each of these characters, even though you're reading it from maybe the female's perspective and you're like, it's kind of funny that she's like, oh, I wonder what's going on with her, but we already knew because I reread the other books in the series. This one had a lot of really fun things, and I really enjoyed reading this series in order because I feel like I used to read her book kind of whenever they came out for free, not even realizing that maybe there was an order that would be best to be reading them in. As always, I really enjoy her books. I think they're fast-paced, they're funny, and really affordable if you want like a quick read that's not terrible writing, and like I said, it's pretty funny. I rated this one a 3.25 stars though. Then I finished the Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy with Kingdom of the Feared. This series was a whirlwind. I feel like the first book took me a long time to get into like the world and the story and the characters, but once the end of the first book hit, the second and third book are just so fast paced and you really get to know a lot about the characters and the world, and it's just so interesting, and I was yearning for more. Like, I am so ready to read the spin-off to this now. It ended, I think, in a way that I thought was like enjoyable. Sometimes a fantasy trilogy, you get to the ending and you're not very happy with how it ended, but this one I completely loved every second of it, and I ended up rating this one a 4.25 stars. And overall I would rate this series maybe I think it's a 3.75 to a 4-star trilogy, depending on like what your tropes that you enjoy in a fantasy. But I enjoyed it. I did think that the writing it takes some getting used to, but once you get used to the writing, the characters are so lovable and enjoyable as you keep going that I think you just get used to it. It's pretty good. I really enjoyed this. Next up, I read Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. This book was lent to me by my best friend, and I've been holding on to this since June, so I'm so excited to finally get through this wrap up so I can give this back to her. This book was a lot more sad than I expected it to be, and I really related to this book. My grandmother had Alzheimer's. She passed away, and I was there to see firsthand what happens with Alzheimer's and how it really changes your life, your personality, and how the person you used to know is really no longer there. And that is a major plot point in this book, at least for the female main character. It's kind of sad because I feel like these characters really just got a really bad hand dealt to them. They really liked each other, and of course because of their circumstances, like, things were just worse and worse and just not working out for them. And I also feel like this is the reality of how life is too. Some people did not enjoy this because of the pop culture references. I personally did not care. Like, I feel like I enjoyed it and I was able just to go with the flow of any references that they brought up. I think it was fun because I did understand all the references. I do wish that the ending was a little different because I do feel like this book kind of was like the ending was kind of a too good to be true, and it kind of just, I don't know, I just feel like it was almost unrealistic the way that it ended, but I was still happy that they got their happily ever after. I enjoy Abby Jimenez's writing. I will continue to rate and read and enjoy all of her books. This one isn't my favorite, but it is not bad by any means. I mean, a bad Abby Jimenez book does not exist. I rated this one a 4 stars. Then I read another arc, and it was Friends with Benefits by Melissa Kanter. This was a friends to lovers romance. They were friends early on, and they ended up being roommates because of unforeseen circumstances. I really liked learning about the female main character's passion for the job. Like, she's interested in doing like sound effects for movies, and I find that so interesting. I just think it's so cool because I never once considered before, like, TikTok like showed me a whole bunch of things, the idea of like someone walking down a cobblestone path in a movie. The sound doesn't get picked up usually in those movies because they're trying to focus on really good audio, and so they have to re-put it in post, and so there's someone who is making those sounds, and like random other things where they try to like recreate these sounds using really weird things. So it's super interesting. And she also dealt with a physical, or it wasn't not a physical disability, she had a really bad, I think she had something to do in her like stomach. It was really interesting to read their story, and it was super fun. There was some things the romance itself didn't sell me. I think everything else I enjoyed more than the actual romance aspect of it, and for that reason I rated it a 3.75 stars. But the book is well written, and there's a lot of really interesting things in there that I really enjoyed. And then in the month of June I read something really exciting. I read Heartless Hunter. I read both of them actually back to back, which is kind of crazy. I guess we could do both of them. This is a fantasy or romantasy duology, and I had so many friends who told me that they loved this duology and that they highly recommended it and that I would love it. And I put it off probably for a good year because I think this book series came out last year, both of them. I don't know. It was everything I wanted it to be. It was fast-paced. The romance aspect was really fun. I really liked that it was almost a true enemies to lovers because of the fact that she was a witch and he is a witch hunter. I didn't really love the miscommunication trope that's happened quite a bit throughout the series, but I feel like in fantasy series that it's easy for it to happen because this is not like you can just call someone. There's like so many other things going on, and especially when you're on opposite sides of like enemy lines, so to say, it's so easy to just not really understand where the other person's coming from or not wanting to hear them out. I think that this duology is probably one of my best of the year. I originally rated Heartless Hunter 4.75 stars and Rebel Witch 4.5, and I do think that Rebel Witch is slightly less good than Heartless Hunter, mainly because you already know where this one's gonna go for the most part. It's a lot more predictable, but the first one is a lot less so. I will say that I think I would have rated this series, I think I would change the rating. Instead of it being a 4.75 stars, I would rate this one 5 now. And this one, I would probably keep it at 4.5. I think this one was a lot better. But overall, the series is like a 4.5 star like series. It is great, especially if you like fantasy with high amounts of romance. It's really good. I would love to read more stuff from her for sure. But the fact that I read both books in the month of June, when normally I'll read like one fantasy book and then read the next book in the series the next month because I need a break, and this, I just want to know immediately what would happen, and I'm already looking forward to doing a reread of this eventually, says a lot, I think. Then I read This Summer Will Be Different by Carley Fortune. I was trying to catch up on the Carley Fortune books, mainly because One Golden Summer had come out, I think in May, and everyone was already raving about it. So I picked this one up, and I really enjoyed this actually, especially after reading the release before this one, which I already forget what it's called. Let me see if I could find it in here. Meet Me at the Lake, which I didn't dislike because I like Carley Fortune's writing, but the plot was just not my favorite. And there was like some ridiculous some things I just did not like at all. But this one had a lot of elements that I did really like. It was fast-paced. It was realistic. I do wish that there was a little bit more interactions between the like main female character and the main male character, but besides that, I really enjoyed this a lot. I ended up rating it a 4.5 stars. Then I read a literary fiction, the only one I think in this whole like wrap up, and it was fun for the whole family. Growing up, I read a lot of Jennifer E. Smith. She was a YA romance author, and I really liked her because she wrote good romances with these subplots that were really deep and complicated and complex, and dealt a lot with the complexities of families and human emotions and everything that comes with that. So when I found out she was writing an adult literary fiction, I was so excited. I did receive an ARC for this, but then I also ordered it through Book of the Month because I had to have it. This follows a group of siblings, and you find out that they become estranged, and you don't really know why until one sister calls them up and asks for them to all basically meet up in the middle of nowhere. And from there you find out why they haven't spoken, how long they haven't spoken for, what's going on with their lives, and it really just shows a dysfunctional family and dysfunctional siblings who really love each other, and how complicated family relationships could be, and how many emotions you could have also for a person. How you could love them and hate them and be annoyed and disagree with their decisions, but you still care for them so much and you want what's best for them and you miss them. I really enjoyed this. The audio was also not bad, but I definitely think that reading it, I enjoyed it usually way more than just the audio, but that's just a personal preference. Overall, I ended up rating this a 5 star, and I think it's technically the only 5 star for June, even though I did change my Heartless Hunter review rating now to a 5 star. Then I read Summer Romance by Annabel Monaghan. Again, she was an author that I've been just trying to get through because I've read a few of her books and I always really like them. They're short, they're adult romances, the characters are typically a little bit older, and I like the amount of depth that she could typically put in a book in about 300 pages or so. This one was pretty good. This one follows a girl who basically her life fell apart after the passing of her mother, and so she was really struggling. She's going through a divorce now, and her best friend says, time to, wake up. No more moping. It's been long enough. Enough is enough. And she decides to finally get out of the sweatpants and go out and she meets a guy, and basically everything that comes with that, you know, her rebuilding her life after divorce and remaking a connection with her children and just taking the reins back. It's a fun romance, and I enjoyed a lot of aspects of this. This was actually one of my book club books for my in-person book club. I did not love the ending. I felt it was a little too perfectly, like, you know, everything was tied with it, wrapped with a bow a little too perfectly, but you know, the journey to that point, I enjoyed every moment of it. And so I still rated it 4 stars because Annabel Monaghan, she's kind of great. And finally, in June, I read Collided. Now, this is the second book in the Dirty Air series. This one follows Liam and what's her name? Sophie. I think I enjoyed this one a lot more than the first one. This one definitely had much slower of a burn compared to the first book. I still don't really love the way she writes the perspectives of her male main characters a lot of the time. They're very crass, and it just gives me a little bit the ick. Like when I start reading their perspective, it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth when I hear the way they describe the women that they're interested in. And like, I don't know, I just don't feel like a guy who is 32 years old should be speaking that way, like a college student, because the mainline character in this is older. He's like 30 or 31 or 32 or something like that. It's also interesting because this book technically takes place at the same time as the first book. So it's interesting because I do also feel like the third book will actually not take place at the same time as this one and the first one, that those two are going hand in hand. Like, we were reading about the relationship struggles from the first book, and I thought that was interesting. Yeah, I do think that these are her stronger book series. I did rate this one at 3.5 stars. And then we get into July. Now in July I read 11 books, 1 thriller, 4 fantasies, and 6 romances. To start off, I read C'est la Vie by Kelsey Whitney. This was a short and sweet romance. It was a little predictable. I knew exactly where it was going. I felt like there wasn't a lot of depth. It, like, what was on the page was what was on the page. It was fine, you know. I got through it quickly, and I ended up rating it at 3.5 stars. And then I read With a Vengeance by Riley Sager, which was my thriller book club book of the month. I did not love this one. I have a problem with Riley Sager because I feel like his writing is really good. He writes like a literary fiction author where he gives a lot of depth and personality to his characters, which I feel like a lot of the time thriller authors just tend to be more surface level and just give you what you need to move the plot along, but he always tends to do a little bit more. I felt like this book was a little bit all over the place. There was too much going on, too many plots. I was confused on who's who a lot of the time. And then when we got to the end, he just did like a bam, 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 bam in terms of plot twists. And it just felt like I was unimpressed. It wasn't bad because his writing is good, but it wasn't good. So that was a 2.5 stars for me. I wouldn't recommend it. Then I read Once Upon a Broken Heart. And this, for those of you who don't know, this is the sequel series of the Caraval trilogy. So this follows Jax from Caraval, and technically this is how he finds his happily ever after. I really enjoyed learning about Evangeline and Jax. I feel like his character is so complicated and there were so many twists and turns, and he just loved to contradict himself over and over again, and every time we were like, oh, they're finally gonna get their happy ending. They don't. There's so many fun things, and I love this world so much. Stephanie Garber made this world to be so interesting to read. Like, every aspect of them and this plot is just so interesting to me. I love the characters, I love the fates, I love the magic system, I love the magical beings, the spells, everything. It's so fun. The prophecies. I ate this up. I loved it. My only gripe with this and the whole series is the fact that I wish that I got more of them in the third book. I wish that they had a few more romantic moments, and I also wish that once they got in their happily ever after, there was more. I don't know how else to say. Like, I wish that maybe there was like a novella or something that just comes afterwards, because I feel like there was this huge build up for them to get their happily ever after and then for the plot to end almost immediately, and that is just what it is. I ended up rating Once Upon a Broken Heart 4.5 stars. Then I ended up rating The Ballad of Never After 4.75 stars. And then I did The Curse for True Love 4.25 stars. Then I read something really exciting with my friend Michaela. If you haven't followed Michaela already, you really should. We did a buddy read to read Fourth Wing. I was really nervous about this book series. I thought it was going to be a little overhyped, or that the writing was going to be really awful, and honestly I was pleasantly surprised. I think because I had low expectations, I enjoyed it more than I would have if I thought it was going to be the best thing ever. But I love the dragons, I love the dragon school, I liked like our main character. I liked the romance even. I did have a few gripes with like the way that some things were described, but that was a Rebecca Yarros thing, not, you know, like the writing was very basic, but I didn't mind it at all. And I really enjoyed the extended epilogue that they had in this book. I cannot wait to read the second one. I know some people did not really like it, so I'm going into it again with lower expectations, and I think I will enjoy it more for that, but maybe I'll enjoy it, who knows. I ended up rating this a 4.5 stars. Then I read It's a Love Story by Annabel Monaghan, and that was the arc, and it just came out at the beginning of the summer. I want to say it was like the end of May, and I enjoyed it. It was about a girl who was basically a child star. She was on like a sitcom of some sort, and she was like the running joke within the sitcom, and so she obviously grows up and she ends up trying to be kind of a producer and try to like pitch screenwrite movie like screenplays and stuff, and basically she decides that she loves this one plot, and so she tries to pitch it to the company that she works for, and they're not really buying it. So she tried to convince them by saying that she's friends with this person who used to be her co-star when she was a child, and she is not friends with him. And so she goes to try to like make him try to want to do it, or like write a song for the movie or something like that. And of course it's the personal journey of her being the joke growing up, and her just really not knowing how to just trust herself and accept that she's not who she was, and, you know, let go of all that insecurity that she had gotten from when she was so much younger. Annabel Monaghan had spoken in one of these, like, you know, when they like book signings, and she said she was inspired by Jemima McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died. And so it was really interesting going into that with that mindset, because I felt like this book made a lot of sense reading it, knowing that it was inspired by her and that memoir specifically. I think I enjoyed it probably more than other people who don't have the context as to why, you know, the book was written the way that it was and what the struggles were and stuff. But I enjoyed it. I feel like she writes really, again, good, short, fun, adult romances, not spicy adult, like older character adult. I enjoyed this one the least compared to all of her other books, but that didn't mean I didn't like it. I ended up rating it a 3.75 stars. Then I read Leave Me Behind. I did do a vlog talking about this, and it's kind of funny because TikTok got me. Like, I bought this book because this cover was pretty cool, and like it also had a different cover on the inside, which I also thought was really cool, and it sold me. I didn't buy it through TikTok, but I bought it because of TikTok. And I don't think I've ever been influenced by book talk because I don't really look for books on there a lot, but I was scrolling and this one kept popping up, and I was just really intrigued by this cover, and then the comments for all these people hyping up this book. So this is supposed to be a military dark romance. I like the book in the sense of it was entertaining, and I like adventure because I like fantasy, so I feel like I've read this almost as a adventure romance. But there was a lot of aspects that I didn't really like. There was like a bully element to this that was taken way too far. It was a 0 to 100 burn. It goes from them hating each other to him being nice and her just accepting all of the cruel things that he had done to her, and, you know, want this romance with him. I feel like if you ignore all of those bad things and you just enjoy it for what it is enjoyable. That's saying a lot though, because you had to go through a lot to ignore some of the things that were very like, you know, my eyes just bulged out. I was just a little shocked by some of the things that I read. I enjoyed this obviously way more than a book like Haunting and Hunting Adeline, where I felt like those were bad books for so many reasons and I would not recommend them. This was a lot more palatable, and I feel like if you are someone who is curious about this genre, this one isn't that bad. Like, it's not really dark, it's just military-esque, so that kind of sucks. I don't know if I would read another book by this author because her writing isn't that strong, and I also don't know if I would recommend this book. Like, I had fun with it, but I don't know if it's really great. I ended up rating this a 3.25 stars. Then I read Crossing the Line by Heather Garvin. I've been reading her backlog. I think I only have one that I own, and then I have the two, like she has like a mystery YA series or something like that, but mystery romance, and that I don't own them, so I haven't started reading them. This one, it's interesting to read this because I had read the series that comes after this, the duology, and I just read her latest release, so it's really fun reading those books and then going back and seeing how far she's grown and how far she's come since this book series. It's so different. This is YA. Again, they're like college age. The third act breakup is a little silly and I kind of wish it didn't happen. I feel like the characters, specifically the female main character, is a little unlikable at times, but I really enjoyed it actually. I mean, it's just funny because I'm reading this after reading her stronger works, so I think it's so much easier to be harsh on this when I'm like, I know you could do so much better, because she does so much better in the future. But, you know, she has to start somewhere, and she started with, you know, some other books. I had a lot of fun reading this, and I ended up rating this one a 3.5 stars. Then I finally started Elsie Silver's Chestnut, what is it? Chestnut Ranch? Chestnut Springs series. This is the first book in the series. I just wanted to dip my toes in to see what it is. It was also a book, a 25 in my 2025, so I wanted to just, you know, see what it's all about. And I don't know if the series gets better, but the first one I did not really love. The writing is good, and I have no issues with her writing. Her writing is actually good. I don't really, again, I'm a slower burn girl, so the fact that a lot of this I feel like was based off of a physical connection and maybe just proximity to each other more than anything, that they spent a lot of time together. I kind of wish that there was a little bit more of an emotional element to this, and maybe it does happen in like books further along. But I already like the community that they built. Like, I like all of the brothers. I like Jasper as their best friend. I like the town. So there's a lot of things I do really like, and so I'm really curious to see how the series is going to continue. But based off of this, I ended up rating this a 3.5 stars. And then finally I read another arc in July, and it was called The Ripple Effect, and it was by Maggie North. I thought about DNFing this book so many times. The writing style was so stiff. The way that things were phrased was so weird. The character, especially the female one, was unbearable, and it was a single POV, so you were just stuck in her mind for the whole book. Once I got to like the 40 or 50% mark, I'm like, okay, it's tolerable. The book does get a little bit better. I feel like the writing finds its groove a little bit more, but for me to get to 50% and really think about DNFing it like every 2 or 3% is not a good look for me. I just think that this book wasn't meant for me, and that's fine. I think that this writing style wasn't for me, and that's fine. There's a lot of nice, redeeming, really beautifully written parts in it that I really enjoyed towards the end, but I ended up rating this one a 3.25 stars. And then finally we get to the month of August. And I'm sorry I'm zooming through these. If you guys want more details on anything, just let me know and I'll talk about it in a different video. But I am currently reading Lemonade Love by Rhys Oren. It is another arc that I received. I'm doing a vlog on it, so you'll get my thoughts as I continue vlogging. If you want to see more on that, like in the next week or so, it will be up. Then my goal, so today is officially the 26th. And since it's Labor Day weekend in the United States, we get a long weekend. It's a holiday weekend. So my goal is probably to finish Lemonade Love today or tomorrow, and then do One Golden Summer as my final summer read. So I was in a bit of a book slump between July and August. I read much slower in August. I did end up still reading 6 books as of today, because I finished a book yesterday. We're on the 26th, so the month's almost over, and I think that's it. I read 1 thriller and 5 romances. I read The Missing Half by Ashley Flowers, and that was really, really, really good. Probably one of the best thrillers that I've read this year. This one had to do with a girl whose sister had disappeared when she was in high school, an older sister. And time had flown by. I think it's maybe been 5-6 years. She's in her 20s, some sort, like, you know, in her 20s. And this girl comes up to her and said that her sister had also gone missing. And basically they work together to try to find what happened to both of their sisters. It was fast-paced, lots of twists and turns. There is no good guy. They are all bad people. Every single one. Everyone is a suspect. Everyone is suspicious. And I didn't really have a hunch of what was happening until maybe the last 10% of the book, which is, I think, the ideal way to do it. You don't want to be like, huh, I figured it out. I knew that this was going to happen. No, I had no idea. I was completely shocked by it. I ended up rating it a 4 stars. Then I read Hat Trick by Chelsea Curto. This was her summer release. This was the most recent one. This is book 4 in the DC Stars series. This one follows Riley after he had a really bad accident. He was a hockey player and ended up having to amputate a leg, so obviously he is not playing hockey to the capacity or ever again. And this is a romance with the athletic trainer on their team, Lexi. you meet Lexi and you've known Lexi for 4 books and you love her so much. So it's really fun to see how they came to be, why they came to be, and honestly why they made perfect sense with each other. They have hinted towards them, like towards Riley liking Lexi since book 1, so you knew that Riley had a crush on her, but I never would have expected Lexi to reciprocate that. So it was really fun to see them really trust and build this connection through his rehab. I really enjoyed getting to know Riley. He's a lot sweeter than I expected him to be, and not in a bad way. It's just like Riley was one of those characters in the series where he wasn't really a focal point character. I feel like the main characters were always Liam, Hudson, and Mav, and even Ethan. So to learn about Riley and learn his story and see what he had gone through and see how I feel like Chelsea Curto did this complete justice was really, really nice. I feel like this book was the perfect book to read while I was in a book slump because I did zoom through this one. I always love Chelsea Curto. I cannot wait for the other books. I think we're getting another 2 or 3 books this year. I don't know how she does it, but I really love this one. Oops. And I ended up rating this one a 4 stars. Then after that, I read Out of the Woods by Hannah Bonham Young. I was trying to figure out, I think during my TBR, what I thought I would enjoy to read over the final month, especially with me being in a book slump, and I decided to choose this one because it was a short read. I enjoyed this one. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as Out on a Limb, but there was a lot of aspects of this that I really enjoyed. I also do wish that more was touched upon in terms of the conflict. So this couple, they're married, and basically the female main character goes through like an existential crisis where she's kind of like, I don't know who I am. I don't really know if I even want to be married anymore. I don't know if this is working. Even though I love you, I don't know if this is working. So they end up signing up for this wilderness like marriage counseling retreat, and they find themselves back to each other. There's a lot of really good conversations and a lot of conversations on conflict avoidance, which I thought is really interesting because being in a couple with someone that you don't really argue with, or you don't want to stir the pot and so you just agree or accept things as they are, is such an interesting conflict to have because it's kind of like miscommunication but not really. And so in this they learned how to speak their minds, speak their hearts, and really try to work past that, and if they really have an issue with each other, to just express that to one another versus just like pushing it to the side because it's not that big of a deal because you don't want to hurt someone else's feelings. I feel like a lot of people didn't really enjoy this book, and I see why they didn't like it, but I did enjoy it. I ended up rating this one a 3.75 stars. And then I read another Heather Garvin book. I read Under My Skin, sorry. And I think this is part of her new series. They're both going through different types of grief. The main female character is struggling because her best friend is finally getting married, so she's moved out of the apartment, and she doesn't really have the same sense of community and support that she used to have. And while she's so happy for her best friend, like, relationships change with time, and it's just a difficulty that sometimes people don't really expect, maybe, or it's just like when you think about grief, you don't think about the changes could be still a form of grief. And so then also she finds out that her parents are getting a divorce and they're going to sell the house, and so that's another form of grief that she's working through. So she decides to come back to her hometown, and you know, she has to pack up her stuff and try to talk to her parents and figure out like why are they getting a divorce. She thought her family was so happy, so kind of it shattered this perception of just happiness. So she's staying at her brother's apartment, and at the same time her brother's best friend is staying there because he is renovating an apartment above his tattoo shop, and he is dealing with his own form of grief. His father had passed away earlier, and he's obviously really struggling with that. He was really close to his father, and having to confront those feelings has been really challenging for him, and being there for his mother has been really challenging for him. And it's really fun to see how they support one another and build this bond of trust and just acceptance of one another, and it was really nice. I really am so excited for that. I think it comes out in September. I rated that one a 4 stars. If you haven't read her yet, I highly recommend starting with this one. It was so good, and I kind of liked that the characters were not college age. They're a little bit older, and I really, as someone who's not college age anymore, I really like that. Then I did my famous beach read reread. I read Beach Read when it first came out. I think I looked it up. I think it was like 2021, so it's been 4 or 5 years. This book is so good. I am so glad I decided to actually take the time to read this instead of reading something new. I think with being in a book slump and taking so long to finish a book and just having a little bit of trouble concentrating, I feel like it's really nice to go back to something you knew you were gonna love. And there's so many elements and details and lines that I completely forgot existed, but they were just so beautiful, and it was so nice to reread it because I feel like this book gave me so many different emotions, and I don't know. It was just a magical read. I do have a full vlog where basically I only read this because I'm in a book slump, and you could see my thoughts over that week. I think I'm going to do a full Emily Henry reread, at least, yeah, of all of her books. I think it was just so special to read this, and I keep forgetting like sometimes how nice it is just to reread a comfort read. I haven't done that in so long, so yeah, I rated this one 5 stars if you're not surprised. And finally, I read Bed and Breakup by Susie Dumond. This was a female, two girls who used to be married to one another, and they bought a bread and breakfast and renovated it together, and then after a whole bunch of conflict they decided to separate, and it's been 7 years now. They're still separated, but they both happened to come back to the bed and breakfast that they used to own. It's now abandoned, like no one's using it anymore, but they both happened to go back into town and stay there at the same time for totally different reasons. And of course they fall back in love, and this happens because they get an offer to sell the inn, but they have to fix it up first. And so while they're fixing it up together, they, you know, find themselves, they have a few conversations and everything. There's a few things I didn't like about this and a few things I really did like. I like the writing style. It was well written and it was enjoyable to read both perspectives. I love a character that's a chef. I love an artsy character. Like, they're really fun to read. Each character had very different personalities, which I also enjoyed. I did not like the fact that I feel like it took them a very long time to kind of decide that they want to be back together. I feel like the book was like built, like you could tell they had feelings for one another, but they were both completely in denial. And the way that it was written wasn't very, it didn't really make me feel like they even were in denial. I felt like they really just did not want to do it, which is interesting. I also did not like, well, so then yeah, so they basically decided to stay back together and then the book ended. And I was like, why did you do it a little bit earlier than that? Even if like nothing happened, I just wanted the thoughts to come across the characters' perspectives to be like, you know what, I really would have, like, what if? You know, and that really didn't happen until almost the very end, and I did not like that. I think that was my big gripe with the book, honestly. The writing was fine. I would read more by her, and I ended up rating the book a 3.5 stars. Now, that was a lot of books. I'm a little tired. I'm worn out of that one, but it was really fun because I love chatting books, and it's kind of interesting also, like seeing what I originally wrote down based off of what I wrote on Fable versus my thoughts after sitting with it from the original time that I read the book. For example, like the Once Upon a Broken Heart and Fourth Wing, and the big one was Heartless Hunter. I didn't expect, you know, for it to be so good, and it was. And so that was great. I think I'm done, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I don't know if I'm going to do this seasonally from now on, or maybe could go back to doing it monthly, but I just feel like the summer was so busy and I had so many ideas of things that I wanted to post that were not just the wrap up, and I wanted to break a little bit from like the routine of doing like a TBR, you know, and then a wrap up at the end of the month. So I feel like I achieved that this month, and I'm pretty happy with how my summer content has been. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you want to see from me. Maybe there's something you're interested in seeing from me, you know, a thought that you can give me. But as always, guys, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.